Yes, Novak is back in a sense, making a final of Masters 1000 final. Let's talk about this 19-year-old Jakub Mensik. Pretty sweet to win your first ever ATP title and have it be a Masters 1000. And, I feel like João Fonseca has been the heavily hyped teenage player. Understandable. He won the Next Gen Finals, actually beat Mensik at the Next Gen Finals last year. He's younger. He's from Brazil, obviously a country that goes, absolutely crazy for any type of athlete and superstar. Mensik is a little more quiet and reserved from Czech Republic. He now is the highest ranked. He is the highest ranked teenager on the ATP side, jumping up a number of spots inside the top 30, beating Novak 7-6, 7-6 in the final. It just seems like another face we have to keep an eye on and watch.
Yeah, and we've had him on our radar for a little while, and I was actually quite surprised that that was his first title. I had to kind of scratch my head and think about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, what cooler way? I mean, aside from getting a slam as your first ever title, a Masters 1000 is pretty close to that level of incredibleness for your very maiden ATP crown and trophy. And just like I said when Steven joined us about how there's lots of room for multiple Canadian tennis journalists, there's room for all these new players. I love it. The more, the better. And we squeeze him in there while Djokovic is still, at the opposite end of things at 38 years old, still going. And yeah, bring in these new faces and let's see how Djokovic can do against them. I'd love to see the two of them have a few more against each other, just like when Carlitos came on the scene. I mean, really came on the scene a couple of years ago, and him and Djokovic had some great matches that year. I mean, that continued last year with their Olympic gold medal match as well. Um, and it was a cool dynamic, I think, again, between the two different ends of the age spectrum,
Yeah.
having Mensik going for his first ever title, while Djokovic, meanwhile, was going for his 100th. Ultimately, it didn't happen, but just goes to show how long he's been around and how consistently well he's been able to play. I mean, perhaps the greatest of all time. And the fact that Djokovic was a pro tennis player before Mensik was even born is just, again, how much more can we say about Novak and what he's accomplished? But the fact that he's out there playing against guys now who weren't even around when he was still a pro or starting out as a pro is pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, like almost half his age. And second time they played, Novak was pushed the distance when he beat him in Shanghai last year. That was a three-set match. And it should be noted, Mensik is, he's said before, Djokovic is his number one idol in this sport, the reason he started playing tennis. So you can imagine how he's able to kind of keep it together mentally on that side of the court, not feeling not getting overwhelmed by the moment or the pressure, closing that match out in straight sets 7-6, 7-6. Quite a stat. He's the only teenage player to beat Novak Djokovic in straight sets as a teenager, which is incredible. So 7-6, 7-6. And normally it's Djokovic who's kind of the tiebreak monster. Mensik 7-0 in tiebreaks in Miami over the week and a half. Pretty
Well,
incredible stuff.
there you go. And he was cool as a cucumber. I mean, he did
Yeah.
not even cave for a moment. I mean, Djokovic hit a pretty crazy forehand winner off of a serve, I believe, late in the game, in the final game, perhaps. And I was like, oh, are we going to see Novak do his thing,
Mhm.
like against Federer in that Wimbledon final back in, what was it, 2019, where he hit those two insane shots down match point. But it wasn't meant to be this time. And, he didn't present physically, as we mentioned earlier, as if that was likely to happen either. One last point about Djokovic, or sort of about Djokovic, is as he's going to try and break Jimmy Connor's record of 109 titles on the ATP side of things. I was just astounded when I heard on the women's side of things that Chris Evert had 157 singles titles and Martina Navratilova had 167 singles titles as well, not to mention all the double stuff that she won. And boy, those numbers are just staggering when you think that
Yeah.
Connors has the most on the men's side at 109. Meanwhile, those two women just absolutely crushed it going beyond 150. That is a staggering amount of tournament wins.
Those feel like pretty untouchable numbers, completely untouchable numbers. I have to say Jimmy Connors, because I felt like Roger Federer had a legitimate shot to break Jimmy Connors' record, especially when he started playing so incredibly well again, 2017, 2018, 2019. You felt like, oh, wow, he could do
It
it,
was possible. Yeah.
that it was possible, and he ended up five short. Novak Djokovic at 99, 11 titles is a lot to get. A lot to get at this stage. It is very difficult. And you look at his priorities and what he wants to play. He has a smaller schedule. He doesn't really go off and play ATP 250s and ATP 500s, hardly ever, outside of maybe he'll play a tournament in Belgrade just to be home in Serbia. It seems like a big time challenge that I would honestly be surprised if he pulls that off.
No, fair enough. That's a good point. It would have to involve him adjusting perhaps his schedule, and if he really wanted to target that, then yeah, maybe he'd have to play some of those lower level
More tournaments,
which seems yeah unlikely. It doesn't seem like his style. Aside from the ones in Serbia, that have personal meaning to him,
Mhm.
I can't see him doing that just for the sake of getting that record.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this ATP news. This was an interesting hire. We've spoken about him. I mean, we've spoken about him at length over the years as one of the great ATP talents, and you always kind of root for him and feel for him at the same time in Andrey Rublev. And he's had a pretty up and down 2025. Early exit in Australia, did win an ATP title, but went out early in Miami. He's hiring two-time Grand Slam champion former player Marat Safin as a coach, which is a kind of fascinating hire when you think about Safin's temperament, the type of career he had. It feels like a lot of parallels between the two, where Safin could never really put together his talent with his mind. And when he did, he was one of the best players you've ever seen. So maybe he can kind of offer that perspective of what he went through in his ATP career and help Andre in some type of way.
I mean, maybe this is a way for Safin to sort of, correct the highs he hoped to attain during his own career but couldn't, and maybe wants to live through Rublev. But when I heard of this one, I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, they both seem like the same sort of personality.
Yeah.
When you're looking for a coach, are you not looking for someone who is stable? And I mean, maybe Marat Safin has matured, and you'd hope that he has at this point. But certainly, when he played, that is not a word that I would, put in my vocabulary to describe his game. I mean, the guy would be out there smoking darts after practice. He
Yeah.
similar to a Nick Kyrgios, didn't necessarily prioritize the physical aspect of the game. And Rublev is such a head case. I mean, we've seen how tortured he's been over the last couple of years. I don't know if this is the guy that's going to help him even out, but hey, maybe it'll surprise me, and these two together will somehow be the missing link to have some stability from Rublev, who is an undeniable talent, but mentally just lacks that ability to lock in and block out the noise and the distractions and his own voice in his head, really, which much like we could be talking about Marat Safin here.
I will say I've never once questioned Andrei Rublev's hunger and desire to win. I mean, and his motivation and how hard he works, all those aspects. He won't be out partying till 4 in the morning. Safin kind of struggled with the fame and the popularity and those sides of it because that kind of derailed his career for a portion of time. But as I said, I mean, he still managed to win 2 Grand Slam titles, won Davis Cup a couple times with Russia back in the day as well. He still managed quite a great career, despite the hiccups along the way.
You just thought he was going to accomplish so much more, right?
Exactly.
Like when he
Yep.
came on the scene and was beating guys like Sampras and
Oh yeah.
Leighton Hewitt. I mean, he just seemed like he was going to be a real physical mainstay on the ATP tour for years with the game that he had. But yeah, it goes to show you it takes a whole lot more than talent. And it just gives you all that much more respect for the big three and what they were able to do and how prioritizing tennis for Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic was really the number one thing for all of them.
Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.